Travis Wayne Goodsell. So, another morning with another shopping trip. I've was given by the shelter a month bus pass so that I can do the grocery shopping for at least a month, since I have to carry everything. They refused to provide me with an initial food supply order and housing stuff. So, stuck with what I have here. Now that the church has been exposed as criminal again, and this was the SEC, in case you hadn't heard, and it was for tithing. This, I hope, will help people understand why the church is evil, why they're racist, why they're sexist, why they're bigoted, why they are hateful, why they neglect the poor. You know, I drive by the Deseret Industries on my way to the Smiths, and so I see it every single day now for a month, and then we'll see it every other week or something like that. I don't have to figure out how long stuff lasts until I need to go shopping again for groceries. But even the Deseret Industries, you'd think it's a charity place because people donate, but that's the whole point. People donate to the church, and in this particular case, it's all sorts of housing furnishing items. And the church has refused to take in appliances, I guess, because of the problems that are caused by appliances. But at least housing essentials. And so you can get used panties. They're supposed to throw those away. But nonetheless, there are those stories out there, aren't there? And and the church charges for them. You have to pay for those items that were given to the church free. And yeah, there are those that get a bishop's order to get stuff for free, but it doesn't cost the church anything. You have some who are missionary volunteers who work there, and then the church, for those who are paid employment, they pay minimum wage. They won't start you off at a high rate, and they prefer to get people who are wanting to build a resume. So they're not intending people to stay there for their life. And so they love to prey on those who are impoverished and mentally and even physically disabled. And this is the sad reality of the church, as I'm able to do videos each and every single day about every single aspect of Mormonism because of their corruption, to expose, to correct, to condemn all things Mormonism, because Mormons can't be good, and it's because of the teachings of the prophets, the example that they set, which is a criminal example. And so even with this SEC thing, you know, you're going to have Mormons who are going to try to dismiss it as no big deal. because the church still exists. They haven't been shut down like they were in 1887 with the tithing scandal for the Perpetual Integration Fund, where Brigham Young had Mormons pay into it, and then that money was used to bring his converts, who had learned the church was named the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints rather than the Church of Latter-day Saints, after being changed by a unanimous vote of the leadership from the Church of Christ that Joseph Smith started it as. And did you notice he didn't start it as the Church of Jesus Christ? Why? There were people who broke away from Joseph Smith before Brigham Young murdered Joseph, who started their own church. And guess what they named it? The Church of Jesus Christ. And it's because they were disappointed that they'd been lied to about the church. It's not a Christian church. It's not about Jesus. So they went and formed their own church about Jesus. And yet Mormons are still in denial to this day because of the lies and deceptions and cons and criminal fraud of Brigham Young. And so they came here to the valley, and Brigham Young forced them into slave labor to pay back the money. You know, it's not a free ride. You got to pay me back. And so again, Mormons put money in. Not Brigham Young. Mormons were forced to put money into the Perpetual Immigration Fund. And the Mormons, who were beneficiaries of that money to get to the Salt Lake Valley, had to pay it back. And then it was even worse because Brigham Young, once they had paid it back, were then granted citizenship in the United States of America. Not allowed to do that, Brigham. That is not your role and responsibility. And so, yeah, the United States shut him down for his tithing financial crimes. And the church doesn't want you to know about that. And they say that the United States was big, bad, and mean, denying the church religious, white supremacist freedom to practice their religion with polygamy, sex trafficking, underage child brides. Again, Joseph wasn't involved with any of that. It was all Brigham. And the fact that ex-Mormons don't realize that, that's the big con of Brigham Young. The church lies. And they lie after they've been caught lying. So, for example, I was born believing that Joseph Smith looked at the plates and rendered a translation, saying it to Martin Harris and then Oliver Cowdery. And then they got caught. People found out about a rock and a hat. And so the church now lies that Joseph had used a rock and a hat. And even you have Nelson, who gets up and conference with a special program and demonstrates the rock and a hat. This is how he would have done it. No, you're still lying to us. And none of you would have known unless you listened to my channel, because I had to do actual research, because I can't trust anybody. I can't trust Fawn Brody. I can't trust Rough Stone Rolling. I can't trust anybody, especially the church, to tell me the truth about church history. And so I have to do the work if I'm going to learn the truth. And so I did the work because I'm educated, degreed, experienced, published, and am the foremost expert in the field of anthropology of the ancient Middle East. And that knowledge that I got from that degree, I can take into any situation. any field of science, any period of time, any culture, and thus I'm able to go to the origins of Mormonism and utilize that anthropology knowledge to do real research. And I've been doing videos with my discoveries for you. So there's this thing called, because I can go on either way here. I can do the Helaman 622, or I can go to CRT. It would look like I was choosing CRT, wasn't it? But yeah, with the church being racist, I mean, we can use both. I mean, we'll do both. We'll combine it together into one video. So, in the Book of Mormon, in Helaman, chapter 6, and verse 22, I mean, you have 21 where it says, Satan stirred up the hearts of the Nephites to unite with the bands of robbers. And we learn other places in the Book of Mormon that when you embrace the secret combinations and it dominates your society, your culture, you're heading for destruction, because society cannot last too much longer. And in verse 25, to skip down, it is these secret oaths and covenants that should not go forth unto the world, lest they should be a means of bringing down the people unto destruction. And we see how that's done. In verse 22, or well, even in 21, it includes it at the last part, that the Nephites united with the bands of robbers and had enter into their covenants and their oaths, that they would protect and preserve one another in whatsoever difficult circumstances they should be placed, that they should not suffer for their murders, their plunderings, and their stealings. I thought plundering was stealing. But lying as well. And it came to pass that they did have their signs, yea, their secret signs. I wonder what secret sign an organization led by Lucifer would have. I've done those videos. It's the inverted pentagram. Started with the Illuminati, went to the Scottish Rites, Freemasons here in America, then went to the Brighamites, the Confederates, and then the KKK, and then the Nazis, and then the GOP. And if you're going, well, the Democrats are the deep state, relax, they're involved too. They were the KKK. And it was McCarthy after World War II where they switched, because the KKK got exposed when the leader raped his mistress and beat her to death, I think it was. And so people were distancing themselves from the KKK at that time. And what is there here? And so then they united with the communists in World War II against the fascists of Nazi Germany and the others that supported him. And so that's where the change of Democrats into a liberal platform occurred, or socialist republic, communism. And so with that change, the liberal Republicans, because they were liberal under Lincoln, liberal Lincoln, you had McCarthy rise up and say, we need to restore the New World Order under neo-Nazism, and we need to find and identify and blacklist all of those commies in our nation now. Well, that's how it happened. The flip. And so Nixon, in his first campaign, running for office, had the elephant stars flipped upside down. If by chance you see a pentagram, do not let it stay. Quickly turn it upside down and worship Lucifer today. And so, yeah, anybody who's not putting the proper star on the elephant are trying to deceive you. And so, yeah, now they're MAGA. And yes, there are other smaller branch-offs of gangs and criminal organizations and such like that. But the church, they haven't really branched off much. There's the Mormon Mafia guy who was working for Howard Hughes. But the church really hasn't broken as much as the other side has. But this is what the Book of Mormon warned us about. And there's secret words. They use different coding to identify themselves and identify who is and who isn't a part of their group. And so they'll ask you a question out of the blue here in Utah. And if you don't answer it correctly, they'll know you're not one of them. Because you're thinking of a different definition for the word. And this, that they might distinguish a brother who had entered into the covenant, that whatsoever wickedness his brother should do, he should not be injured by his brother, nor by those who did belong to his band, who had taken this covenant. And thus they might murder and plunder and steal and commit whoredoms and all manner of wickedness, contrary to the laws of their country and also the laws of their God. They are anti-American. They are a domestic terror threat. And because of the spread of them, we still have KKK, for example. The KKK didn't just die and go away. We still have Scottish Rites. We still have all of these groups. Still have the Illuminati. Still have the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So yeah, I have to drive by the temple every day too. And I am wondering, are they going to carve it off? Are they going to keep it? They kept it for the Nauvoo Temple when they rebuilt the Nauvoo Temple exactly as it was by Brigham Young, because Joseph Smith didn't design it that way. Don't be fooled. It was Brigham who made the changes after assassinating Joseph Smith for the finishing touches on the outside. And I've gone over the symbolism of it with the placement of the different symbols. That's a language. That's a communication. Secret signs. And it was talking about Brigham Young having conquered Joseph Smith and having risen to the sun position at noonday. And so, but if you want to play ignorant with everybody, see, I'm verse 24. See, I grew up being taught about Joseph, being in the Boy Scouts, to have citizenship in the nation and in the community and in the world, to be a good person and to not let evil destroy America. And so when I saw that my own church was a part of the evil, I had to speak out against it. And Unfortunately, we have corrupt government. All of Mormonism is corrupt to protect the church in whatever difficult circumstances they should be placed. And so, yeah, Shurtleff and the guy who replaced him, yeah, they were arrested and tried for corruption in office. But Mormons on the jury protected and preserved those guys in those difficult circumstances that they were placed, following the Book of Mormon to a T. But the bad part, the warning of the dangers that will lead to the destruction of Utah, of America. But that's their point. They need to destroy America to restore Brigham Young's kingdom. And that's why they do it. They are anti-American. They are domestic terrorists. Mormons, having been born in the covenant, born and raised Mormon, to find out that my religion are the enemy of the people, when I was led to believe that we're the good guys. And we are, if we're Joseph Smith's church, but we're not. We are lied to. This is not Joseph's church. This is not a Jewish church. This is a Christian church with Jesus. White supremacist Jesus. And thus why the church is pushing religious freedom. It's white supremacist. It's because they're racist, sexist, bigoted, hateful, neglectful of the poor. They cannot do good. They don't give anything. Everything is donated to them or paid to them. And they only do a portion from what is donated to them, because it doesn't cost them anything to give that part, but they make money back from everything they do give of what is donated, just like Deseret Industries. Everything is for profit, for the overthrowing of America, for the overthrowing of our rights, our privileges, our freedoms, our agency. This is what I've been through with verse 24. Everybody sought to control me, to take away my agency, to leave me destitute, to deprive me of my property. They don't like me because I expose the church, because I'm a threat to their plans and plots to overthrow the government and restore their kingdom. All I did was follow Joseph Smith, which the church says he's our founder. Isn't he true? He is. And that's the whole point. They had replaced Joseph Smith with another person. It's now a Joseph Smith who is Christian, who saw Jesus, who's okay with committing crimes and seeking to overthrow the government, who's a sexual deviant and other criminal activities, who's a racist, sexist, bigot, neglectful of the poor. had been replaced about Joseph. And that's the problem. When Mormons who are not informed of this, informed consent, are not informed that we are the great and abominable church, as talked about in the Book of Mormon, to a T. Everything is exact match. And Mormons, they stay. And so, yes, to combine it with the CRT, critical race theory, we have to put this joke in somehow. Critical race theory is a little bit misguided. It's the concept that blacks were brought to America as slaves and have been kept down as slaves ever since, and that generation after generation of white folks are taught and raised to continue to diminish and treat blacks as subhuman. Even the Constitution was written to not consider blacks as full human, as their right to vote was marginalized, not full vote for their vote, if they were allowed to vote. And so it took the amendment to give them a full vote, and thus become full human under the law, and thus be treated equally under the law. And yet we're still seeing the atrocities committed against blacks. That's critical race theory. And so it does not include other races. The Chinese, the Japanese, the Native Indians, and others who have come to America and have been likewise treated poorly. And one of the other problems is that it assumes that it assumes that every white person is guilty, that we all have some level of racism in us. And they are employing a psychological manipulation tactic in doing so, is because psychologists, as I've warned you about, bully people with name calling and repeat it over and over and over and over again, trying to break the victim of their bullying into believing the name calling. I guess I am a loser. I guess I have nothing to live for. Boom. That's where it comes from. Bullying causes suicide. It is not a matter of blaming the victim who attempted suicide and trying to get kids to go after the bullies. Hold the bullies accountable. Stop the bullying, and you will stop the suicides. And thus the church must stop their bullying of Mormons here in Utah, and thus will stop the suicides. Stop the depression medication taking of the women in Utah. Stop the bullying. And so this is a reverse bullying in which they are presupposing that all whites born and raised are automatically racist because of the teachings of their parents. And that's a fallacy argument. And so the concept of a theory is shot down in flames, because theories are supposed to be sound. They're not supposed to just be whatever opinion you want. But no, it's incorrect to assume that everybody is. And in so doing, they're hoping to get sympathy, at least from the government, to grant them reparations. There's a problem with that. Centuries have gone by. There are people who are descended from black slaves who are not considered black. On my mom's father's side, they were plantation owners. However, there was one ancestor, plantation owner, who raped his underage slave and thus gave birth to my line. She does not get reparations because I'm not considered black enough. And so we cannot have reparations for anybody because how was I born if not for the dismissal of the argument that whites are naturally born racist? Because that child had to pair up with somebody to produce a child, and then that child produced a child, and that child produced a child, and I'm no longer black. I've got some black traits. The hair, it's got waves, being dark, but I even have, well, my sister, Tara Lynn, has a birthmark on her leg, which is interesting. I have freckle spots, but I had the gap in my teeth, had that. That was mostly due to, let's see, I think it's this tooth right here. That's a cap, because it's my baby tooth still. It never fell out, and it had nothing to replace it with, which is why it didn't fall out. And thus the reason why there was the gap, specifically. But my grandpa was a dentist, and fixed the gap, and tried to fix everything else despite my reluctance, not understanding the end result would be beneficial for me. But again, no informed consent. I didn't like wearing retainers, and then because I refused to wear the retainers properly, then I was forced to wear braces for a period of time before my mission. Yeah, so anyway. But, yeah, my grandpa, I never recognized racism from him. But my grandma, yeah, she's from the Danites. I recognized that white supremacy in my grandma, and thus in my mom, who chose my grandma's beliefs rather than grandpa's beliefs. And so she's now dead, and I should have her last letter to me in one of these boxes. So I may get to read it after all. So, yeah, it's sad to belong to a church that you thought was one thing, and then you find out it's not just another, but it's completely the opposite extreme of what you've been warned about your whole life in the church. We are taught about Lucifer. We have unique doctrine and theology about Lucifer that Christians are upset with and mock. Lucifer's our brother? And it's interesting that those who aren't Mormon, they'll only say that Lucifer is Jesus' brother. They won't say that he's our brother too. But, yeah, the Book of Mormon describes him with the Great and Abominable Church and how he impacts people's lives and thinking processes. You know, they go over Layman's mindset of how he thinks he's supposed to rule over Nephi and the Nephites. They go into detail about the great and abominable church and how they enslave the saints. And then I just read Helaman 6. Great, awesome detail that is supposed to help us identify and recognize when such practices and belief systems are implemented in our society so that we can stop them, or at least be warned of them so that we can flee if we can't stop them. And then even the selections from the Book of Moses. You have Lucifer saying that he wants to be Jesus, and he'll do whatever it takes to trick and deceive people into thinking he's Jesus if necessary, so that they worship him. And then you have chapter 4. His whole plan of salvation, plan of happiness, taking away agency. In the Book of Mormon, talking about using flattery, pacification, deception, messing with your emotions. And women are the most vulnerable to that. Because the church pushes a spiritual witness, which is feelings. And so you hear the prophets, you hear the elders and other high priests talk about how their wife is just naturally more spiritual. They're more in tune with the Spirit. They're talking about feelings. They're calling you snowflakes, women. They're calling you emotionally fragile. The tender feelings of your wife. I'm sorry, I've been married twice to Mormon women. Both were failed marriages because their feelings were not tender. I disagree. It's a con. They're tricking you. But it's sad. Literally just sad that this is not the church that it was supposed to be, that I was promised it would be. Just like everybody in my life here in Utah. I am promised things, and then they back off. So it was with the shelter. They were going to get me all sorts of stuff. And I got a house. Oops, wasn't supposed to get a place to live, was I? And then all of a sudden they back off on all their promises that they had made, thinking that I wasn't going to find a place. And then they ran out of money, coincidentally, because the one case manager was purposely hesitating to keep me from getting a place to live. Because she knew the money was going to run out. So she just had to get me past January. Mission accomplished. But then I got this place. But, she had no money anymore. Yeah, and because she failed, she's been fired. So I had to have the other person keep her promises to me. Because apparently she wasn't kept in the loop. That she was supposed to protect the church from me. And so, yeah, she still has to pay for March's rent. Again, she promised to do it next week because we have a couple more days. Tomorrow and Tuesday. So I'm going to have to follow up to make sure that she keeps her promise. But then, all the housing stuff, all that, no, not gonna get help for that. But all of that was necessary because the previous apartment that I was in, again, did the same thing. They attacked me. And for what? I stayed in my room doing videos exposing the church. Oh, that's why. And so, yes, they protected the church. They sought to murder me. They cut off my money. So they couldn't pay rent. So they couldn't buy food. They tried to murder me. They're in a position of trust, so that they're not supposed to be murdering people. They're not supposed to be harming people, let alone the Fair Housing Act. I'm not supposed to be discriminated against. I'm not supposed to be assaulted in my own home if I'm of a different religion. And other and so I see Helaman 6 every single time, because Mark Shurtleff, he was the one in 2008 who protected the church. I filed a petition for a redress of grievances, and I say it that way rather than saying I filed a lawsuit, because it's in the First Amendment. It's not just freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, freedom to peaceably assemble. We, the people, have a right to protect ourselves. And I did that, and Shurtleff, under orders of the church, because in my discovery, they say they held a secret meeting about me. They knew who I was. They had representatives of the church in that meeting to do the will of the church towards me. Which means that the president of the church, which was Thomas S. Monson, along with the agreement of all 15 prophets, because they're the ones who also are in charge of money, the spending of the money. And I got the receipt. They had paid for my indefinite incarceration, which is illegal. When it's the government that does it, it's an indefinite incarceration. When it's not a government, it's kidnapping. But in this particular case, it was the government. The church had me kidnapped and indefinitely incarcerated through the government, contrary to the laws of our country. Not alone the laws of the God they claimed we were from. They followed Helaman 6 to a T. And 6 years of my life were gone, and I wasn't supposed to get out. 3 people retired. Shurtleff was one of those people that retired, because Sean Reyes was the one, when I was set free, who dropped the charges. I mean, it's been 6 years. I've served my time. And so, yeah, I got a reimbursement of $20,000, which furnished my former apartment. And all of that is gone. They don't want me to have possessions. They don't want me to have a life. They don't want me to have liberty. That constitutional thing. They wanted to control me. They want to dictate how I live my life, what I'm supposed to do, what I'm supposed to be, what I'm supposed to think, how I'm supposed to feel. And they tried to murder me to do that. This is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They are the enemy of the people. They are domestic terrorists. And as hilarious as it is to think that they're actually going to conform and comply to the thumbnail I'm going to have, that they're going to replace Sunday school with CRT training. They are racist. They are sexist. They are bigots. They hate the poor. And they hate mankind. And all Mormons who conform and comply, who remain silent, who willfully become evil like the church to protect the church. You're going to be betrayed. The church is using you. And once they've accomplished their goals, they're going to toss you out on the street like the Lost Boys of the FLDS Church. I've seen the horrors that are coming because I know their secret code. That's how I got evicted. The way to perfection. Oops! Page 290 and 291. Lucifer hands over the keys of government to the church? What? That was all code. Lucifer isn't going to attend Adam on Diamond. Jesus isn't going to be given the keys of government from Lucifer. And so yes, what it's saying is that the world leaders are going to hand over the government to the church. One way or the other. Whether they have to cause the nation to secede, whether they overthrow the government, whether they destroy the nation, thus the government. Day that shall burn as an oven. This year, the bicentennial year. Do you remember the 21st night of September? Nephi came to Joseph Smith in a vision. It wasn't literal history. That needs work. I got rhythm. Fozzie Bear. So, alright. We're done. So yeah, nobody can stop the church now. We are headed on a path to destruction. It's coming. And having been involved in delivering the mail in Draper in 2008, I witnessed the economic trouble coming. Because I was specifically contracted for the new subdivisions there on the hill above the temple. And yeah, when I first started, lots of people were moving in. I was getting a lot more business, and thus a lot more money. But then all of a sudden, 2007 or 2008 in the summertime, the mailboxes weren't getting checked. Mail was piling up, specifically the advertising. And I was at first going, this is curious. And then it more and more. So I realized something was up. And now that it's happened, but it was after I got locked up. So I'm very concerned, as I see here, with brand new apartments. They're getting built. But this building still has over a dozen or two apartments left to be filled. And they're not getting filled as fast as I would think they would be. And they've got a whole bunch of other buildings that are being worked on. And some of them are already finished. And so I'm just not seeing the volume of people that I would expect to see if these buildings were actually finished. And so for me, I was able to get in the required low-income apartments. Got the last one. But the normal priced homes, they're not getting filled as much. Because they're just too expensive, I guess. And so I'm very watchful. But the church has ordered Utah to make this the reason. So they'll build the brand new stuff for when we get replaced. And I've warned you about what they're planning with the coming of their kingdom being restored. They're getting things set up in order. That's why they're corralling the homeless together right now. So that they can have them all together in one place and then exterminate them. And other atrocities that are coming, like child brides. They're grooming Mormon children. I've warned you, I've done the videos. I know what's coming, because the church is not true. They're the great and abominable church. So yes, your worst nightmares will come to pass, and it will shock you if you are not believing that they're the great and abominable church. And once they got you in a state of shock, they'll take advantage of that. They know what they're doing. They are pure evil. So be warned.